Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we? All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. Happy to have each and every one of you back today. And today we have a special guest. Super excited to have him on the show, Santiago Granda. Welcome to the show, Santiago. Santiago is with Amazing Ecuador, one of my favorite partners we've worked with. I've met with other people on his team and just really impressed with what they're doing. And so happy to have you on the show, Santiago. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Jason. It's such a pleasure to be here. I want to say hi to your audience as well. Thank you for having me and for letting me show a little bit of what I do and a little bit of my country.
Well, wonderful. Well, we want to start with learning a little bit about you, because that's what's, in my opinion, the most interesting thing about these episodes is an opportunity to really learn, kind of like what's behind the people that do this. Why do they do it? How they got into it? Pretty much everybody I've spoken with has an interesting story. Quite a bit of variety, but they're all interesting. And so let's dig in there. How did you get into guiding? How did you get from where you were to where you are now, and why?
Well, there's a little background about why I became a guide. So for a while, I think it was easy to me to speak languages. I was studying English, I was studying French. But I remember when I was a little kid, my mom used to have pen pals, writing emails back and forth. Well, not emails back then, it was letters, right? So writing letters back and forth. And then these friends she had in Italy, she had in the States, in Brazil, they came to my country, to Ecuador. And she was showing them Quito's old town. So she read a lot about it. She was very knowledgeable about history. She is a teacher, but she was a physics teacher. Nothing related to history or geography, but she learned a lot about it. And then she guided her friends in a supernatural way. I was a little kid when I remember she was doing these kind of things. And this is a funny fact. She was the guide informally for the Globetrotters. They came to for a game, and we met them at this hill in Quito called Panecillo. And she just introduced herself, and she started, throwing all these facts and history stories about Ecuador and Quito. And I remember when I was maybe 6 or 7 years old. I even have a photo with Globetrotters in Quito. And then when I grew up, it just felt natural to me. I was always talking to people, trying to show them the richness of my country, of the city I was. And I guess it was always natural to me. And I'm so happy I went down this way, because I've been tremendously awarded because I am able to show things, and I'm always able to fulfill people's dreams. I think that's one of the most interesting things about becoming a guide.
That is such a cool story. I remember you shared a little bit of that with me last time we spoke. And I was just, it caused me to reflect on, because I do marketing stuff with a lot of tour operators, and boy, hasn't that changed. Now we've got automated email campaigns and, paid Google ads to create conversations and connections and all these things. And I'm envisioning your mom sitting there, writing out her letter, trying to get the words just right, and, and exchanging things. And the other thing you said that kind of reminded me of something that's just kind of I firmly believe that the best guides are teachers at heart, right? Because that teacher, I mean, that's really kind of what we do. Whether we're teaching someone a technical skill, climbing a mountain, teaching someone, scuba diving or safety stuff or whatever it is. And it's just that wanting to really kind of share whatever's inside of us, frankly, whatever our interests are with somebody else, so they can, so you can share that experience with your client. And a good guide, in my opinion, gets just as much out of an interaction as the clients do. Maybe sometimes more, I don't know, because they're really showing up. They really, really want to share. So I can see that connection with your mom. Okay, she's a physics teacher. She's not necessarily a history teacher or a biology teacher. But I think when you're a teacher at heart, that's really what matters most. So that's very cool. And I'm also, I gotta admit, I'm envisioning you and your mom, and I don't know how tall your mom is, but I'm kind of have this picture in my head because you were pretty young. I'm guessing you and your mom standing around the Globetrotters. I bet did you get a picture of that?
We do have. I will have it sent to you to share it. I have a picture of them. My younger brothers. I was like on their knees. My mom was like on their bellies. They were huge. We were right there. It was weird because it was not usual to see these giant basketball players walking around in a group in the middle of the old town. So we definitely took a picture of us. And I think I have it, so I will have it shared with you. Maybe you can show it later to your audience. But it was, yeah.
I can picture that, and I can picture everybody else in town, or in the area, right? As you're walking around, I can picture everybody just looking like, okay, what is going on here? So, and that would still happen today, even with all the visual images and stuff we see on the internet and TV. It's still when you basketball players are just always kind of interesting when they show up. So anyway, yeah. Thanks for sharing that story. That was pretty cool. Was your mom supportive of you getting into guiding?
Yeah. Well, my father, he wanted to get me into finance and economics. He's an economist, so they were both related to numbers. Numbers also come easy to me. But I guess I was a people person, and I always wanted to get to know people. I always wanted to go to places. I always wanted to travel as well. So I've been lucky enough to fulfill many of my dreams through my career, through my guiding profession. And I guess this is just came into my DNA. Being a host, as you said, somehow being a teacher, and learning on these languages with her, learning some Portuguese, some French. Most of my English, I learned it from her. So I had the tools that very early in my life. I remember when I was 15, going to the beach and talking to everybody who looked like a little blonde, blue eyes. I would come to them and talk to them in English. Sometimes they were Argentinians. Sometimes, most of the time, they were from other countries, from Europe or from US or any other countries. And we made super good relationships with them. At first, with some of them, I also became a pen pal and started exchanging letters through mail service. And eventually, technology came up and it was way easier to do it. But then when I started to think about becoming a guide, my dad was on the, like, I don't know, man, maybe this should be a nice hobby, but you should do economics because it's going to make a good living out of it. But here we are 20 years later, still passionate about it, still feeling like I'm not just a guide. I think I'm a host. When people come, I want to feel them welcome. I want to embrace my culture. I want to learn about it because myself, I've been super lucky. I've had this kind of friends when I travel abroad or when I travel to other cities. I always meet people who are super generous with their knowledge, super generous with their time, and I just want to give back and be the same, be just a host and show them with passion what I know, and learn from them as well. Of course, it's just permanent exchanging knowledge and experiences, and that enriches our lives.
No, I agree with you completely. And I think it's just one of those things about being a guide. There's the heart of the teacher, but there's also just, I mean, let's be honest, most guides probably fit in that tiny little slice of the population that are outgoing, friendly, willing to walk up to strangers on a beach at 15 and just start conversations. Hey, where are you from? Where are you from? And which is what kind of makes it a lot of fun to be in this world of guiding and adventure tourism, because the people that I'm working with, and like this conversation now, for example, this was somebody I'm the same way. I want to know everybody. I want to learn everybody's story. It could be the guy in the tienda. I'm in Colombia right now, and I walk down the street and pop in the tienda, and my Spanish isn't that great, but I'll spend 10, 15 minutes speaking to somebody that's like, something about my appearance. They recognize that maybe I'm not from here. And if they have any knowledge of the US, or sometimes even if they don't, they just want to have that conversation. And I'm always so happy to do it. I walk out of there like, I know about their kids. I know about their uncle that lives in Manhattan, and their plans to go visit when they get the visa. And it's so much fun. I get energy out of that. I can tell, for those of our listeners that aren't looking at your face when you tell these stories, I can clearly see it on your face as well. So that's a lot of fun. I'm curious, do you have like what's your first memory, or let's put it this way. What is your memory of the first time you actually made money as a guide? Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was very early before I got in college, and in college. It was right after high school. And one of the people I was talking to at the beach, they said like, "Hey, can you take me to Cotopaxi as well? And I have a car. I will pay good money. I will pick you up and drop you off." And of course, of course, why not? So it's you're going to pay me for this? It was unbelievable because I love the big outdoors as well. So they say like, "Oh, we're going to do this. We're going to Cotopaxi. We want to not climbing it to the summit, but we want to hike around the place. So maybe if you're free this Saturday, we could do that." So I went, and after we visited Cotopaxi, they say, "Oh, tomorrow we're going to Otavalo as well." And my mom, she loves traveling inside the country. She's not that good for airplanes, but
Okay.
I was already familiar with this destination. So yeah, Sunday was perfect for me as well. They picked me up, dropped me off, and then at the end of the day, at the end of this weekend, they just kind of tipped me. And it was the first time I was getting money for walking around places I love. I was After I was done with high school, I stopped for a year. I was supposed to study abroad, but things happened, and I had to stay. But I was not able to enter college right away. And throughout this year, I was supposed to study something different. I was related to the diplomatic school, so I wanted to be a diplomatic. Same thing, good with languages, traveling abroad. It was related. It was I guess it was a people career as well, a social career. But then when this happened, I changed the switch and I said, I don't want to study this anymore. I want to become a guide. I want to make this my profession. I want to make a living out of it. And it was super nice. So the first time was before getting into tourism as a professional career, and it just felt good. It just felt nice to be being paid for walking around in the big outdoors.
Yeah, yeah, and kind of making friends. That's what's always so interesting about it to me, is like there's the outdoor. It's really about the connection too, right? You're out in a beautiful place, but you're creating a connection with somebody that's, yes, it's a livelihood, and many of us in this business, that's how we make our living. And it's like, how cool is it that we're able to make a living making friends? Because you've got, what comes out of it is you've got a long list of friends from a bunch of different places in the world, and what a cool opportunity that creates. I'm curious, Santiago, what was there anything along the way that you look back at it and think, man, that was a mistake? That was a kind of learning points or lessons, either around tourism or just about you choosing your career path?
Yeah, well, I couldn't say yeah, we all make mistakes. I do not regret them though, because one of the things about learning from those mistakes that makes it easier along the way. So, not in my career, probably some decisions that I made, like staying for way too long in some jobs that were related to tourism, like working in a hotel. I loved it. I met different people every day. I met some good friends, guests, and workers that I hold up today close to my heart. So it was nice, but maybe staying for way too long, a couple of jobs. That's the only thing that I say. Maybe it was about time to move different ways a little earlier. But other than that, from I've learned from most of my mistakes, and also they took me to where I am right now. So I couldn't say I really regret it. But well, if we had a chance to, shuffle things around a little bit, I guess all of us.
Yeah, hindsight is very good. My hindsight's 2020. I know I've made a few tactical errors in the past, but like you, and like you, it's hard to complain when we're sitting here having this conversation that we're having today about our opportunities that we've I guess been able to take advantage of or benefited from in tourism. I'm curious if there was someone listening right now that maybe has a similar background, or maybe somebody had no exposure to tourism, but they're listening to this because they want to figure out, how do I get into it? How do I get to do what Santiago's doing? And I know this is a general question because there's a lot of different variables, but what is the biggest piece of advice you give to somebody? And maybe it's don't stay in the wrong job too long. I don't know. But what's the biggest advice you give to young Santiago, whose father says you need to go to school for finance or this or that, and you're like, but I want to do this. So what's the best advice that you would give somebody?
Well, I would say, if you feel like you're good at it, if you have a natural talent, if you're a natural, go for it. Just go for it. Sometimes we just deny our natural skills that been, given to us. So my first piece of advice would be, just go for it. Give it a try. Be persistent. Also, life is about being persistent. It's, at first you start super motivated, but motivation washes away in a couple of months or weeks or whatever. But if you're persistent, you will achieve things in life. Sometimes you can feel it's the wrong way for you, but if it makes you happy, things will happen for you. So my advice would be, if you feel you're a natural, if you feel like you want to do it, just do it. Do it. Go for it. Do it.
Stick with it. Is what I hear you saying. Is
right.
Stick with it, because it's, I've been around long enough to have had a lot of conversations with people that are working different. I guess I want to say traditional jobs. Not that I don't think tourism is a job, because it is. But people that are working other traditional jobs that will say to me, "Man, I wish I could do that. Wish I could be involved in that." I did it for a summer, but then, my mom and dad said, "Okay, that's enough. You had your summer. Let's go. And now it's time for you to go on to school and quote unquote get a real job." And they often are expressing how they're frustrated that they made that choice. And, 20, 30 years later, looking back at it saying, "Man, I wish I would have kept going in that direction." So I get that completely. One of the questions I wanted to ask you, because you had mentioned last time we spoke, you kind of want to talk a little bit about how the outdoors and being involved in the outdoors can help people kind of just deal with, I don't want to say deal with personal issues, but for some reason, those are the words that are coming out of my mouth. So I want to ask you, what has the outdoors done for you? What do you think the outdoors does for people that want to push themselves? Because I know you're a rock climber. So I'm not sure if that's the direction you were going with the conversation, but tell us a little bit more about your experiences with overcoming challenges and obstacles through your time in the outdoors.
Yeah. For me, it's been tremendously helpful to be in the big outdoors. It helps me healing the, whatever issues you have. it has always helped me to get in contact with nature, just being out there in the wild, in the big outdoors. It just helps with, say, self-contemplation. So it has helped me solving issues because somehow being out there and feeling that small, realizing that sometimes my problems are, you know, I'm just a little piece of this big machinery in the universe. So being out there in awe, watching the how immense nature is, how powerful nature is, makes me realize that sometimes my issues are not that big, my problems are not that big, and that's in general with the big outdoors. But specifically, when it comes to rock climbing, it helped me realize that I am more capable than I thought I would be, um, just because of overcoming the challenges that present yourself when you're doing the climbing. You need imagination, you need problem solving skills, and you need to rely of someone else who is belaying you. So you need a partner that you have to rely on them with your life. So it taught me a lot of different lessons about my life. And I started climbing when I was 35. So before I was doing some mountains, bicycle riding, whitewater rafting, things related to adventure and nature. But when I started rock climbing, it opened a whole new mindset to me, realizing I am capable of overcoming challenges, realizing that I can trust people with my life, those kind of things, and problem solving, all these skills that rock climbing gave me, I put them into my life, in my everyday life. And yeah, it just changed the way I looked at many different things happening in my life. Actually, it was, for me, it was an eye opener in many ways. And I started enjoying as well, being fit enough to overcome these challenges. So it worked on my mind, it worked on my body. And at the end of the day, when I feel a little on the blue side, always rock climbing, just touching the rock and feeling Mother Earth so close to me, it just helps me go through with my everyday life.
What comes up for me when I listen to you is the importance of being present in the moment, especially when you've got other things like you said, that are kind of weighing on you, maybe interpersonal relationships, finances, whatever it is. It's really hard to think about those things when you're out climbing a rock and you've got, a harness wrapped around you. You've got someone else down below belaying or whatever. It's that you're really stepping into the present. And that's super important because that's what we have. Everything we have really actually happens in the present, So that's pretty cool. And also, just you use the word awe. And I remember listening to someone not too long ago that was talking about the value of awe. And this person was suggesting that every day you should go out on an awe walk, I think is what he called it. And just go out there and find, 2 or 3 things that just bring awe. And it's kind of forcing yourself to look at maybe a bird. Like this morning, I walked down to get coffee and a flock of parrots flew over. And I was like, I just stopped and looked at them and just, that's cool. Or it could be, man, this croissant is amazing, whatever. But if we don't force ourselves to do that, we get to the end of the day and we're like, well, what did you experience today? And we can't even tell you what we experienced because we were so hung up on what happened yesterday or so worried about what's going to happen tomorrow. And the value of that awe and rock climbing is such a perfect analogy for life anyway, about overcoming obstacles. We were just talking about being persistent. I said, what's the piece of advice you give to somebody? Keep going. Well, guess what? I haven't climbed a lot of mountains, but in my mind, you look at the guide and say, hey, I'm having this, are we ever going to get there? And the guide's going to say, yeah, if you just keep going one step after the other. And it's a great analogy for life. So thanks for sharing that. What about, you've been doing this for a while for a few different types of activities. You mentioned, the rafting, all those different activities. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, other than I really want to touch on, because I am a firm believer it's not, I mean, we're talking about the mountain. The mountain has benefits. There's a reason we go to the mountain. But I'm a firm believer that adventure tourism isn't necessarily about the mountain, the river, the trees, the animals. It's about the connection. And if that's a connection with ourselves, a connection with our community, a connection with our family members, maybe that are sharing the experience with us, connection with the guide, all these different things. So I want to touch in on connecting with the communities that you guys work with. And I'm sure you have some amazing stories. I can just envision you with some clients, meeting a family and just sitting down and having, a glass of wine and some bread and just conversations. So tell us a little bit about the importance of the community and how that ties into tourism as well, if you would, please.
Of course. Yeah. First of all, I guess I forgot to mention being present is one of the things about adventure, because if you hesitate, if you have noise in your mind, noise happening there, things could go wrong if you're not focused into what you're doing at that exact time. And yeah, I forgot to mention being present, especially when rock climbing. But about communities, of course, it took me a little while to realize that tourism affects community, where you make these activities. So at first, when I was traveling, I was just staying in huts or tenting camps close to communities. They were super generous. They were embracing us as visitors. And then when I started working with these activities, I realized how much they could affect, in both positive and negative ways, the local destinations that we were visiting. So what we wanted to do, and I'm talking maybe 15 or 16 years ago, is making our communities an active component of the places we visit. Because at the end of the day, rivers are everywhere. Mountains are everywhere. Experiences like this, they can happen outside in nature. And if each one experience will be super different from the others, but at the end of the day, you can find them everywhere. What makes places different is actually the people, how rich their culture is, how rich their gastronomy is, the stories they have, which are just amazing. So that's what makes a place unique. Even if you're a luxury traveler, at the end of the day, you will have nice, comfortable room, maybe a massage. But what makes memorable a trip, in my opinion, is when a trip becomes a journey. In order to become a journey, you have to go out different than you came in. And that happens just when you relate to people, when you learn from people, when you have these deep immersive experiences with people. In order to do so, you rely on communities. Like, even if you do it whitewater rafting, then you have lunch. And then for lunch, you just got to a place where a family opens their home. So starting from this little fact, they open their home for guests. It's already a very generous act, especially nowadays when people is just so disconnected because of technology. I mean, it connects us in different ways, like this podcast, which is connecting people, and it's very interesting. But we can't lose the ability to connect with real people in real time. It has an extra value to be there, again, to be present. So for me, it's super important to relate with community, to talk to them, to learn from them. Maybe they will show me a place that I didn't even know there exists because they are from there. They will tell me, oh, if you just walk 15 minutes forward, you will find this amazing landscape or this waterfall or anything that I didn't even know there. It was there. It was just through people, just through getting to know them, getting to experience with them, getting to share time with them, that I enriches the experiences of the visitors. And eventually you are not just a tourist, then you become a traveler, and it's not just a trip, it becomes a journey.
Oh, I goosebumps. Yes. And as I was hearing you say that, I was like, you're absolutely right, because there are so many cool places, and I've been fortunate to see quite a few of them. And the highlights of every single one of the trips is a moment sharing a connection with somebody. And I can think to, okay, I don't know why this one popped into my head, but Victoria Falls in Zambia. It's like, okay, that's pretty spectacular. But if you said, Jason, we're just going to drop you off by helicopter, we're going to drop you off at Vic Falls. Nobody's going to be around you. You're not going to talk to anybody. You're not going to see anybody. You're just going to be there by yourself. Maybe even like, we're going to take your phone away so you can't even share it on Instagram. It would be cool. It would be nice to see it. But oh my gosh, it would be about 1% of the experience that I could have if I'm there with maybe a family member or some friends or just other people that I've met that are traveling from around the world, or the guide who's telling me the story of when he was a little kid and his mom brought him there for the first time because she was guiding clients or something, her pen pal friends. And or you think Mount Kilimanjaro or any of these amazing places, any of the mountains in Ecuador, the beaches, going there without anybody else around. For me anyway, and I can't speak for everybody, but for me, that would be like, oh, I need to share it with somebody. And I appreciate that some people have the solitary, like, okay, I want to climb that mountain by myself to see if I can. And they're connecting with themselves. So I'd still make the argument that it's all about connection. They're trying to connect with themselves, trying to overcome their stories or their, biases that they have in their head about, what they're able to do, the desire to feel independent and all that stuff. But really, it's all about connection. So I appreciate that you shared that. And let's touch on, because you said sometimes our exposure to these communities or our involvement with these communities can have a negative side. And I'm sure you've seen that. I'm curious if you have any stories or observations that maybe the typical traveler doesn't have, but would benefit from, because I know if we don't know, we don't know. And we show up and maybe it's just a social, I don't know, we show up in shorts and flip flops and they feel like we're not respecting their temple would be an example, in Southeast Asia, perhaps, or there's a lot of things like that come up. So I'm curious, maybe specific to Ecuador or other areas, what are a few things that you feel like travelers should know so that when they do show up in these communities, it fosters an understanding, or it fosters positive sentiments?
Of course, I think one of the first things that I always highlight is that we are entering someone else's space. So respect the destination you go. Don't be just a lousy tourist. Don't be, loud. And it's not your place. It's not your home anymore. And they are opening their homes. They're opening their places. They're opening their hearts to you. So be respectful. Be a respectful traveler. Enjoy the company. Learn their ways. Even learn a couple of words in their language. It will make them feel good, and it will make you feel good. Then you can connect easier. So go the extra mile, make an extra effort to get involved with what they do. And they've been living these ways most of the times when you go to these ancestral communities. Most of their lives and for generations, they've been doing things this way, which means your way is not the only way. There are other ways to do things. So, of course, don't throw any, don't litter, or these kind of things are basic rules. But other than that, I would say respect their ways. Just admire the way they are, learn from them, and just assimilate it. And if it works for you in your life, then take it in. But if it doesn't, it just doesn't work for you. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just different than what you think, than what you believe, and the way you do things, they're just different. So, I think the social impact with tourism, it's a danger when it becomes so massive that it can not pro massive tourism for many reasons, not just cultural reasons, of course, natural reasons. There's a low capacity for trails in nature out there. So everybody else that comes after you get the same experience that you had. They get to see the same things. They get to enjoy the landscapes. but they also get to enjoy the culture as rich as it is. So those are one of the possibly the negative impacts of tourism. It's becoming so massive that it starts deteriorating the relationships in the communities that you visit, or the natural landscapes. So always like keep it under control, keep going, keep learning, keep doing things, keep traveling around the world. But start like the only thing that you should take from there, it's just like good memories.
Yep.
And leave nothing else behind, you know.
Yep. Leave nothing but footprints, take nothing but photos or something I've seen. Yeah, no, that's it's great. And one of the things you mentioned was learn a few words of the language. And I got to tell you, I've been traveling for quite a while within the industry. And a couple of years ago, I became a full-time nomad, and I, sold all my stuff, bought a one-way ticket to Colombia, and I'd never spoke more than maybe 3 words of Spanish. And so I've had the fortune of seeing the progression for me as far as how I'm received into the community now that I can speak some Spanish compared to the very beginning when I first got here. And my biggest observation is the amount of social interaction I have increases proportional to the to the number of words that I know in Spanish. I don't know how else to say it. And so the example to that is, if I walk into a tienda or a little market or a restaurant or really anywhere, and I open my mouth because I don't look like I'm from here. And a lot of people maybe that look like me don't really make a huge effort to speak the language. So when I show up and I'm trying and people overhear me, it's weird because I'll walk in and I start speaking maybe with the shop owner, and other people in the shop will look over and just smile. They're just happy to see that, hey, this guy's trying, or they're laughing at me. I don't care, whatever. But what I've noticed is that if I'm trying, all of a sudden they want to try. It allows, because my Spanish is not perfect. I suspect if I walked in and my Spanish was perfect, they probably, there would be one level of interaction. But when I walk in and I'm trying, and it's clear that I'm trying and making an effort, amazingly, all of a sudden they're willing to make an effort with their English. Because, if I just walk in and I'm only English, nobody speaks English. Nobody wants to try and speak English with me. I walk in, I speak, a handful of Spanish words, and all of a sudden the English starts creeping in. Because the reality is their English may even be better than my Spanish. And I'm giving them permission to be vulnerable with their English, because a lot of them are insecure about their English. They don't have a lot of opportunities to practice it. So they're not likely to jump in and start speaking to you in English if they feel like they're going to be judged or if they're embarrassed. But if you're making a little bit of effort, all of a sudden they're willing to make an effort, and it just you kind of see the light in their eyes. It's sweet, I have a chance to practice a little English with somebody whose Spanish isn't very good. So they're not going to judge me. And we've got this little bit of dialogue going on. And it just makes my days so much more enjoyable as I move through the day, having interactions like that. So the reason I share that, and you already know this, you see this, right? You have a lot more language skills than I do. And I'm just sharing this because, if you're traveling to another country, you will have a much better experience if you learn 10 words. If you can say hello, please, thank you, do you have, just a handful of words, and you'll have your experience will be 10 times better than if you just walk in there with your Google Translate on your phone trying to get people to read it. So I'm happy you brought that one up. I think that's a really good one.
And if I may, if you learn about 10 things, there's one thing that you should always learn when you're traveling abroad. There's a big tip for your audience. Thank you goes a long way. Hello, please. Yeah, all of those go a long way. But one thing that I've learned through traveling is a phrase that I always need to know in local language. Where's the bathroom? Where's the toilet? Yeah, that's one of the things everywhere you go. I mean, you can but
yeah, the hand and arm basics. Signals, body language with I got to go to the bathroom. That reminds me, and I don't know why I'm sharing this, but I'm going to. I was in Venezuela. This was before I really made any effort to learn Spanish. But I was in Venezuela. I'd been there a few times, and I had a moment, of things that happened, traveler's diarrhea. And I'm on this little island off the north coast of Venezuela. They really do not speak a lot of English. Medicine for whatever I had. I knew the word Imodium, but apparently Imodium is not a real common word. So it didn't get me very far. And I was in there. I was like, do you have Imodium? And they just looked at me blank stare. And so I found myself using body language to try and explain what was wrong with me and what I needed. And I was like, and then they gave me this medicine. Of course, everything was in Spanish. And I'm like, okay. And then I left and I started thinking, I hope they interpreted that the way I was sending the message and didn't think I was just constipated. Because I could see where the body language would look the same, right? And if they think I'm constipated, we're going to have a much bigger problem. And it was, And I've noticed since I started speaking Spanish, I'm perfectly comfortable walking in. And I don't know every word, but I'm confident that we're going to figure it out. I'm not going to walk out with something to help my constipation when I really need something to help with something else. So anyway, what made me think to share that. So yes, it is good to know how to say, where's the bathroom? And one of my favorite ones I love about the language, especially, Spanish, is I really think that part of why the Latino culture is so connected and so social is because of the language. I mean, you just listen to the words. Once you start to learn the language, you start to realize, oh, that's why they're all so social, because words matter. If your language, for example, in Colombia, if you say, thank you, muchas gracias, they're going to respond with con mucho gusto, with much pleasure. That's how they say you're welcome, with much pleasure. Like, that's pretty cool. That's like, we don't have that in every language. And when they use words like that, it actually reinforces the way they deliver their service, because they believe that that's what it's all about, is to do it with pleasure, with my pleasure, that type of thing. So the language is great. So I definitely encourage people to do that. And I'll be honest, when I went to Southeast Asia this past spring, I fell short. I got about 3 words. It was a little bit mind blowing. So if maybe Spanish is a little easier than jumping into Thai or something like that. One of the things you mentioned that I do want to touch on, because you had mentioned it last time, is something that you wanted to touch on, and that's terrorism and how it impacts. Was it terrorism or tourism that you told me? I don't know, but I think you'd written down terrorism. So what was behind that?
It might have been maybe tourism.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I was confused.
Maybe a typo there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, is there anything you want to discuss about terrorism? The way you'd written it in some notes, I'd asked you, hey, is there any particular topic you want to discuss? And you actually wrote down communities, and maybe I just read it wrong because I don't have my glasses on. But yeah, okay. Well, that answers that. So we don't need to talk about that unless you've got something.
Nothing there.
No, okay, good. That's for another podcast. All right, cool. That's great. And just real quick, I want to make sure that everybody listening to this has a clear idea of what is Amazing Ecuador. It's a DMC, so I'm going to let you explain what DMC means, because we've got some people here that know, some other people that don't know, some people that like to know. So educate us on what DMC is, how that works, and then tell us a little bit more about Amazing Ecuador before we wrap it up.
Sure thing. So in the travel industry, there are different components, components, I'd say. So what a DMC do, we are a destination management company. So basically what we do is that we stay local. We are very knowledgeable about the specific location. And then we welcome travelers from other places and show them around, but we are the local connection. So even if you're having a trip booked through your, the travel agent you trust, or a company you trust back home, let's say in the US, so a travel agent that you have traveled before with them, it's impossible for them to do the job in every location you send your travelers, your tourists. So they have to rely on local companies to make operations, and that's what we do. We are kind of the local logistics company for other companies or other travel agents around the world who maybe have been here. Most of the time we work with people who travel a lot. They've been here, they get to know us, they trust us, and then they start sending their friends, let's say, to Ecuador and the Galapagos. So that's my field of expertise, Ecuador, Galapagos, and at DMCs, that's what we do. We are the destination management company. We are the local partners, and what we do is, in a way, our platform we have is just business to business. So we don't really work with the selling process to a final traveler, to a final client. That's on the opposite side of the spectrum. That's what our partners do in the US market, in the European market, in the British market. They get these relationships with the local travelers, and once they confirm their trip, it's in our hands to make the dreams happen. So it's a very interesting job because at the end of the day, usually what the information we receive is interests, motivations, and the window of time they have to travel. And we are super happy because we can kind of build up a personalized, customized itinerary for every person traveling to Ecuador and the Galapagos. So we don't have actually these group departures, set itineraries. Everything we do is super tailor-made. It just fits the same the way you want to enjoy your trip and have these immersive experiences related to your personal interests. So what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, if you are into fishing, then probably your trip will have one or two stops where you actually get to fish with local communities. Sometimes will be catch and release, like piranhas in the Amazon, or sometimes it will be like, cooking on the open ocean with a local family who are artisanal fishermen in the Galapagos. So you will get to see this experience. It's not just going to the Galapagos, being on a cruise or being in a hotel, getting to see the fauna and being back. You get to connect with local people, local fishermen that did what they do every day for make a living out of it. So they fish for make a living out of it. It's different when you do it just, for tourism purposes, rather when you do it every day. So what we want to do is we want to deliver these everyday experiences with people. So they get to connect, they get to see the way they live, the limitations they have, but the rich experiences they also have. So every trip will be customized, tailored to the motivations you have for the trip. Either this is a multi-generation trip that you want to connect, maybe grandma with their grandkids, or if they want to live a close connection to a local Afro-Ecuadorian community because you are into these cultural expressions. So there will be always these components inside your trip that will try to make your dreams come true. Your expectations will get to become true. It's a nice way of make a living because at the end of the day, you can see the spark in their eyes when they reach those dreams, when they fulfill those dreams. And
I want to ask you this because sometimes in a lot of different industries, people have opinions about why would I work with so-and-so when I can just go direct, right? So let's have this conversation because it's valuable. Because what I hear you saying is, I know enough about the industry. I'm going to put it in my own words that you guys handle the logistics. You're the ones that make it happen. And then your partners, maybe in the US, let's just say, for example, are the ones that focus on the marketing to make sure that the clients can find the trip, that they focus on, maybe some of the handling of the money, the accounting, the initial sales process. And then you guys are the ones that make it happen. So some people in the industry will say, well, we actually own the lodges. We own the operation. You should just book directly with us. Don't book through anybody else. And I get that. That's their business model. I get that. And I guess it's an analogy. I see the value because I ran what we call an outbound tour operator in the US. We worked with a lot of DMCs in other countries. So we would put together some itineraries, working with the DMCs, put together some itineraries that we thought were, appealing, market them, have the conversations with our clients. And then when they were interested in a particular trip, we could go to our partners and customize it, tweak it to make it really, customized. And then, that's how it worked. And then our DMC partners would handle logistics. They would be the ones pick them up at the airport, make sure everything, basically once they get on the plane on their way to Ecuador, it's like, you guys got it. You're in charge. And of course, there's a lot of communication back and forth. I think it's a brilliant plan. And my analogy is, just for anybody that's listening to this, just to help kind of understand my thinking, it's kind of like a restaurant. Like I go into a restaurant, I'm not going directly to the person that's making my food, right? He's in the kitchen or she's in the kitchen, right? So I walk in and I meet the hostess or the host. They show me to my table. I sit down, they give me the menu. That's the outbound tour operator. They're the ones, they put the sign out in front of the building. Come on in, have a seat, let us answer any questions. Here's our menu, here's our recommendations. And then they go put the order in with the kitchen. And the kitchen is responsible for logistics of preparing the food, getting the food ready, and that type of thing. So in that scenario, people are perfectly happy to not discuss directly with the person that's making their food, what they want in the food. So there's a trust thing there, and this happens in a lot of areas. And I think that for the conversation around DMCs and outbound tour operators, it's kind of the same thing. A lot of people there's a lot of benefits and reasons why you might want to work with a outbound tour operator on the US, somebody like an Intrepid Travel or Classic Journeys or, any of them really that work with DMCs. So I'm just throwing that out there. So if you're looking for trips, trying to figure out what to do, I would say don't hesitate to, work with an outbound tour operator. Yeah, the person picking you up at the airport is not their W-2 employee. I get it. But they've established these strong relationships for a reason. And there's a lot of benefits to working directly with the outbound tour operator. So any of my outbound tour operator friends that are listening to this will probably be happy that I'm bringing that up. Is there anything you want to add to that, Santiago? Because I know your relationship with your outbound tour operators is important. And I'm sure you've had people reach out to you directly and say, hey, we saw this trip and we know you guys are the ones that are executing it. So can we just do it with you? Do we get a better deal? Is it cheaper? That type of thing. So what would you like to share?
Yeah. So we are super clear about the platform we have. So we would never compete with our clients. At the end of the day, my client is the outbound tour operator in the US. It's the travel agent in London. They are my clients. The ones who get the benefit of the trip, of course, are travelers. But my client, the one with I want to establish a long-term relationship in terms of business-wise, is going to be the company that sends me all these tourists and travelers to Ecuador. So I will always respect
and how does
channel.
And how does that benefit the traveler? Because I think that there's a benefit there as well. Because
of course,
if I as a traveler, I don't know why it's in my head. One of my partners, I've got a connection with Intrepid, so I'm just going to say Intrepid. Intrepid sends you guys a lot of clients. If they send you a client and that client has a problem, you're going to bend over backwards. You're going to pull out all the stops to make sure that client has an amazing experience and that whatever situation has arisen is taken care of, because you know darn well that they're going to go back to Intrepid and say, hey, we had this issue with the transfer. We had this, whatever. So really it's to the client's benefit because they've got the whole buying power of Intrepid Travel behind them, as opposed to being a one-off client that booked through your website and might write a bad review or something like that. And that's important too. I think there's a benefit to the client, and I think it's worth hearing that. Would you agree?
Of course. It's, I mean, at the end of the day, I would always suggest arranging a trip through a travel agent, through a company, because when things go well, they just go well. They are seamless because someone is doing all the job behind the stage to make it happen. But when you are doing things on your own and things go wrong, that's when you really feel like, oh, I should
wish you had a partner.
I booked this with my travel agent instead of doing it. And about even with I guess price-wise, it's not really that cheap because, we've been working with just the way it works. We work with a lot of restaurants, hotel guides, drivers, and even myself. I'm part of this value chain. So we got super great deals to put together these itineraries that you will never get if you go directly because, let's say, a hotel. You will book the best available rate at the hotel, but the deal that we have as local DMCs is going to be way better. So even price-wise, it's not going to make a big difference because these companies, they have great deals with the local suppliers. So it will be, at the end of the day, it will not be much more expensive, but you will have everybody walking on the back of the stage, behind the scenes, to make everything happen. And at the end of the day as well, you may not see the difference when things go well, and that's the idea. We want to make it seamless.
And the hotel, I'm imagining the hotel, you show up and the hotel accidentally overbooked. Who are they going to book? Who are they going to bump first? Right? The person who booked through booking.com for the night, or one of the many clients that happens to be there, that's under Amazing Ecuador's, arrangement or whatever. It's that booking.com one's going to okay. Oh, sorry, we'll pull up tonight.
Yeah, I guess who's going to get the upgrade if the suite is available? Exactly. Who's going to get the upgrade? It's going to be the grade is going to go to someone who is using, a regular customer rather than one.
It's all about communications, right? Or connections on both sides of this deal. So I love that we had that conversation. Maybe there's other people out here listening that might disagree, and that's okay. This is just about sharing perspective, tips, and some feedback. So I appreciate you there. I feel like you and I could probably do 5 more episodes, and maybe we get to come back and do that at some point. But I'm curious, what else? Is there anything I should have asked that I failed to ask, or that you just want to make sure that our listeners hear before we wrap this up, Santiago?
Well, I think we can have the chance to talk more and more. I mean, last time we talked, it was super nice, and this has been also a super nice conversation. So, just like this, thanking you for opening these spaces for people who maybe never traveled before, and this will encourage them to travel. This podcast will encourage them to discover other places, other cultures, other gastronomies. But other than that, I guess we have covered a lot of basics. And thank you for doing this for tourism. It's a beautiful industry. I'm in love with tourism, and I'm super happy. I just took this road years ago because it's been very welcoming at first. And now I've met a lot of friends throughout the world thanks to this beautiful industry. So thank you for doing this job. Thank you for putting up tourism. Thank you for showing Ecuador as well. And I guess that would wrap it up.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words. And that's exactly why I'm doing this as in the business name, Big World Made Small. It's really about, because the world is a big place. And it just, every time we take a trip, every time we connect with someone from a different culture, that world gets a little bit smaller in a really, really good way. And I'm a firm believer that the more people that travel and connect with other cultures, I mentioned the word terrorism earlier, it's conflict and things like that tend to go down as people become more in touch with other communities. When you see other people as people and realize that they have a lot of the same wants and needs, desires, and all that stuff and concerns, it just kind of changes the way you see the world. So, and having folks like yourself on the show to kind of expose us to, your story and Ecuador and other things that we talked about is really a huge part of it. If it was just me sitting here talking for an hour, I'm pretty sure we wouldn't have got past 2 episodes. So thank you so much for being a part of it and sharing your wisdom. And I look forward to, I'm just up the road in Colombia, so I'll bounce down and see you here pretty soon, Santiago. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Jason. And you're always welcome in Ecuador with open arms. It would be great to, maybe have a cup of coffee or a beer sometime soon in the future.
Pisco sour, okay?
Yeah. Oh, we have canelazo. You have to try canelazo, man. When you arrive,
Canelazo?
This is the first thing you're going to have will be a cariñazo. You will love it for sure.
Sounds like a deal. I will take you up on that. I'll see you real soon. Thanks, Santiago.
Thanks.
I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.